Hello and welcome to Emergence, Leading from the Field. My name is Artemis Evangelidi and I am your host. Emergence is a podcast that shines a light on courageous leaders from around the world, leaders who are shaping the future in bold and inspiring ways. Moving beyond the boardroom, we feature authentic conversations with guests, the change makers, the visionaries, and the innovators who are leading from experience, purpose, and heart, from the field where transformation takes place. These are conversations with people who are listening deeply, acting boldly, and are doing their part to shape a more conscious and connected world. Our conversations will offer a rare glimpse into how our guests have overcome challenges while spearheading innovations that have enabled them to lead from the front lines. Be inspired as our guests share their journeys. Today, I am absolutely delighted to welcome Rugare Gomo, a leadership coach, motivational speaker, and an international best-selling author. One of Rugare's superpowers, and I say one because we will uncover so many today, is making really hard things happen. At 16 years old, he arrived in Australia by himself with about $300, a suitcase, and a backpack. He proceeded to graduate from Monash University in Melbourne, Australia, with Bachelor of Laws and Bachelor of Arts honours degrees. And after practicing law, he joined a startup and negotiated cross-border multi-million-dollar contracts as general counsel. Today, he uses his life to equip people to return to their authentic selves and to be the leaders of their own lives. Rugare, it is such an honor and a pleasure to have you with us. Hello.
Art, hello. It's just wonderful to be with you and just to be still and hear, what this is about, leading from the fields. And that's what life is
Absolutely.
about, isn't it? You can be on the stand or on the court, or in the field. And I just love
That's
that
it.
because a lot of the time, a lot of my life was, being a standby and
Mm,
really you know, overcoming the fear to be on the court and be in the field. And that is
I
what
love
true
that.
leadership is. So I'm so grateful you created that context. It just had me so grounded.
Oh, thank you, Rugare. I want to lead by asking you something that may be a little not challenging to answer, but I want you to just kind of jump in with whatever comes to you first. I want to ask you about bravery, right?
Mm,
Because, and I ask this in the context of you making really hard things happen. What
mm.
what does bravery mean to you? How have you tapped into this? Because I mean, your story is quite phenomenal.
Yeah. So maybe a bit of context. I grew up in
Hmm.
Zimbabwe and moved to Australia, as you said, when I was 16 years old. And in Zimbabwe, there are limited opportunities. There's limited opportunities to create an empowered life, limited
Hmm.
opportunities for career growth, limited opportunities even for human rights. I'm an African gay man, and in Zimbabwe, you can go to jail for being gay. So that's
Right.
the environment, I grew up in essence.
Hmm.
So for
Hmm.
me, bravery has been about being really true about who I want to be and who I say I am,
Hmm.
irrespective of what my family say I should be, society says I should be, my teachers say I should be. There is discovering who I really need to be. And so for me, I think the greatest act for any person to be brave is even being able to say, this is who I am, especially in a world where there's no agreement for you to be that.
I absolutely love that. So, who are you then?
That's a harder question. How dare you?
I invite this question in because I know that tapping into our authentic core and being who we truly are, regardless of what is going on around us and what people say or what society expects of us, is actually coming home. And
Yes.
it's only from that place of authenticity that we can truly live our purpose and our passion and share our gifts with the world. So I invite you to hold space for our listeners as well. If you share who you are, perhaps they will have the courage and the bravery to find who they are.
And I love how you said it, the coming home, because that's what I do. It is returning to
Mm,
self. I was doing some
mm,
reflection this week about thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And a lot of the time, we think that we are our thoughts, we think we are our feelings, my feelings, and wanting to hold on to them. And
mm,
I really got that newly. I am not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings. And why this was showing up for me was like I was asking myself, how in the world did I have the courage to be out gay, proud person? And I came
mm.
to realize that despite being in an environment that had no conversation for me being gay, I knew that there was something wrong because my body kept being sick. I was gravely sick. And
Right.
and all the doctors had no idea what was wrong with me. And I had all the best doctors in Melbourne doing tests, etc. And they couldn't find anything
Mm,
wrong with me. At that time in
mm.
2005, there was no conversation for mental health. And
Right.
of
Yes.
course, what I came to realize is that we all have an inbuilt light. Irrespective of our
Mm.
environment, my body was communicating I'm not being authentic, no matter what I was doing. And I was quite
Wow.
shocked by that this realization this
Mm.
week was that we actually have an inbuilt light. Now we talk about it, from the head level, but I discovered it
Yeah.
newly in my heart that, oh my God, you literally, I could have grown up and I have grown up in a conversation that I shouldn't exist, I shouldn't marry a man, but yet
Mm.
inside of me, my body, my mind was communicating that I was on the wrong path, even though I didn't have the conversation for it. So the
Right.
courage was actually to explore that be curious and explore that, and was like, oh, actually, I'm a gay man. I love men,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
courage has opened up a whole new world for me. So
Yeah.
when you ask me like, who am I? I come from principles, and these are
Mm.
my principles inherently inside of me. So one of them is be fully self-expressed. So in anything I do, I always am curious, is that what the world tells me to be, or is that what's
Yeah.
actually in my heart, in my spirit?
Mm.
That's critical.
Mm.
And being self-expressed that way is called authenticity, because a
Right.
lot of the time people have authenticity mixed up to doing whatever I want whenever I want, and getting validation from
Yeah.
it. When I'm
Yeah.
authentic, a lot of the time nobody's clapping hands for it. Nobody's clapping hands
Right.
saying, "Oh, well done, Rugare. Thank you for being out and
Yeah.
proud."
Yeah.
Like there's no society in Zimbabwe that's doing that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
backing myself in that.
Yeah. Of
So,
course.
what I've discovered about being myself is when I live out my principles, I've got to be my greatest cheerleader, and nobody else can tell me who they are. So, the ones that I live
Mm.
by is, of course, being fully self expressed, integrity. So,
Hmm.
integrity is honoring my word. What I say and what I do is who I am. So, I'm very careful with my words because they create
Yeah.
worlds. Words
Absolutely.
create worlds. So, what I say
Absolutely.
and what I do creates worlds. And that's for
Yeah.
anybody. Whether we want to admit it or not, our words and what we do has an impact. They can either build
Yeah.
somebody up or build a country, build a world, or destroy.
Yeah. Or
And I've
destroy.
got to discover
Absolutely.
that's power. And every single person has that power. Every single
Mm.
person. So the
I
principle
love that.
is I've got to be careful about my words and what I do.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
a concept for
Gosh,
me.
you've said so much in there that I want to draw out, and I don't even know where to begin. Um, the I often say, even to clients and to friends, what other people think of you is none of your business, right? And when we get caught up in what the world is saying or a narrative that has nothing to do with us, it can take us into a space that is not aligned with our values and integrity, because sometimes it leads us into behaving in ways that perhaps we don't really want to, but we're trying to match a certain frequency or a certain energy that's being thrown at us. um, I want to ask you then, in terms of, you came here, you came here with nothing, effectively, but yourself
Yes.
and the belief that you had in your abilities to create something new for you and to create your new world. What led you to the law?
So for me in Zimbabwe, when people's human rights were being taken away or um, there were political prisoners, the people who I
Right,
saw who had power were lawyers. And so lawyers had a
right.
voice. So I was like, I want to have that
Mm,
kind of power. In the
mm,
face of horror, the last bastion in Zimbabwe at that time were lawyers. Now, that's not
right.
necessarily the case today, but that was what I saw.
Mm,
And
mm,
I was like, I want to have that power. So law for me was connected to being able to change the world, really, to be
yeah,
free, to have a voice. And I felt I didn't have a voice. So law was my gateway to that.
right.
Yeah.
And how did that play out for you once you became a lawyer?
Well, my word went.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think many people in the law, we do law to make a difference in the world. We see that, and that's what I started by doing. And then when I ended
Mm,
into law school, you could say that big corporates have a huge influence. And the idea is just come and work for us in a law firm, get some experience, and then go out and do whatever you want to do afterwards. So I bought into that. I thought, the wiser path is get corporate experience.
yeah,
And it did make a difference to my life. But what I discovered was
sure.
that I wasn't my full self expression inside of the corporate
Hmm.
law firm. And that was just me. That's me.
Yeah, of
Um,
course, of
and
course.
so in my journey and my relationship with law has been one of feeling suppressed and then on the other side, using it for complete freedom. So even
Right.
today, the way I able to think. So what does law and being a lawyer help me in? To critically think, to know that
Mm,
there is no one answer to anything. Like I could argue
mm,
for or against any issue, and you have to back yourself. So one of the things
yeah,
law has taught me is if I'm able to back an idea, whether I believe in the idea, why can't I even apply that to me? Imagine that I am
yeah,
my advocate for myself as well in terms of who I be. And I think that's the
yeah,
greatest power in a world where we are now unstable. We are
yeah,
on the sidelines, not on the field.
yeah,
So for me, that's
absolutely.
what law has really taught me to
I
to
love
have that
that.
voice for myself.
I love that. And you made an interesting point. We're in an unstable environment. Well, we're in a VUCA world, right? It's volatile, it's uncertain,
Yes.
it's complex, it's ambiguous. And this is where the field is our ally. This is where stepping into the field can actually help us because that's where we can create and allow things to emerge. So I guess I'd love to ask you what the concept of emergence means for you. And how do you apply that to your life?
It's a powerful question. And I don't have an answer, but I have my lived experience of it.
Mm,
So
mm,
um, I know that when I live in the Western world, there's the ideology of, we're even talking about being uncertain, uncertain
yes.
times, volatile times. And then I look at my grandmother in Zimbabwe, and she went through two wars for independence. She has gone
Mm,
through the AIDS epidemic, where 1 in 4 Zimbabweans as adults HIV positive and dying, and I've had uncles and aunts die. The cholera
right.
outbreaks, droughts, starvation. And all I saw was just power. She was unaffected
Mm,
by it
how
all.
interesting.
And I asked
Mm,
myself, what's that? What's
mm,
that? And I think what that is for me, and this is now where I come into the wisdom of the women before me, is that they knew
yes.
themselves. They were grounded in who they are. In this world
Oh, how
today, we're more
powerful is that?
grounded. I know it's so powerful. We're grounded in what our governments, our family tell us to be. So the external factors. But they were not
Mm,
reliant on that. They were reliant on themselves, their inner power, their inner faith. So for me, emergence has been reclaiming my power and taking the power I've given to people, my parents, society, ideas of who I should and shouldn't be, and reclaiming all of it as mine. So, is my life volatile? No. Why? Because I've reclaimed my power. So things can happen
Mm.
around me, but I know who I need to be to show up to life and meet life on life's terms. So for me, that has been the emergence of Rugare Gomo. So you
I
could
love that.
say that the different life situations, whether it's COVID, whether it's the new political
Yeah.
system in the United States, whether it's tariffs, all of that,
Mm.
what that does is sharpen who I am today. So it's more
Mm.
of the re-emergence of who I've known myself to be, and it's making me sharper.
Yeah. And how does that play out then for your clients and the work that you do now? Because you've moved away from the law, and I assume you do have lawyers as clients, and you are supporting
Yes,
lawyers to find their true selves, and that's always a beautiful thing.
yes.
So how does that emergence and that standing in your power support the people that you work with?
So what's the one thing that most people are coming to me for these days?
Mm.
Fear and resilience. How do I be resilient in this world? How do I be resilient in this
Right.
world? And so how that plays out is, well, I think I've had my dress rehearsal by living in Zimbabwe, where there was nothing that was certain, and our human rights were already being taken away on
Sure.
Independence Day.
Sure.
So how this
Mm.
plays out is having people, when they're connected to who they say they are, like their values and their vision, then they're able to show up to life, powerfully. It's easy to make a decision when that's
Yeah.
happening. It's easy to show up to life based on um, like uh, your values. I'll give you an example on the court for a
Mm.
lawyer. So I've had a lawyer, deal with the African Australian in Brisbane
Yeah.
woman, and she has a Zimbabwean Australian accent. She was spending
Mm.
about $30,000 on a receptionist to answer the phone because she believed that her accent wouldn't have people get her a job.
Right.
So what was the barrier? External. How I
Right.
sound will have people not want to
Mm.
work with me. Now,
Mm. Mm.
that became, and she's spending what? How much money? $30,000. Now, that
Right.
was her belief system. It wasn't grounded in reality. Because, of course,
Mm.
then there's the narrative of, oh, I don't sound like everybody else. I don't have a posh British accent. I don't sound Australian. Nobody's going to want to work
Mm.
with me. On top of I'm a female and I'm black.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that's all power being given to other people. Now
Mm.
imagine. Now, this is what actually happened. Let's just pause. So we saw that that was a fear response.
Yes.
But what's actually the value? What does she value? Making a difference to people, using her voice. So
Mm.
she can't use her voice if she's paying somebody $30,000. She can't actually discover her true power if she's paying somebody else.
Yes.
We paused
To
that.
speak for her. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of course, when she started speaking for herself, she came to realize that she is powerful. In reality, people, of
Yeah.
course, will either opt in or opt out. There's a diverse group of people out there in the world. So she got
Mm.
to be powerful and has been winning legal awards as a result.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
that was like a miracle. That would be like the unintended future that would never have
Mm.
happened had she remained
Mm.
in the fear. Now,
Mm.
we don't guarantee outcomes. That's not what this is about. And this
Yeah.
is the
Of
part
course.
which in the Western world we don't do well in. We want to know precisely if I give up paying that person $30,000, then I know I'm going to get a return on investment immediately. That's not what
Yeah.
emergence is about.
No.
Emergence doesn't dictate outcomes. The outcomes of your values are your outcomes of your values. Being integrous doesn't mean I'm going to become a millionaire. It
Mm.
doesn't happen like that. It could. I've had amazing um, miracles in my life being an integrous person, but that's not what integrity does. You can't control the outcomes of integrity. You can't control the
Yeah.
outcomes of self-expression. Me being authentic opened up meeting the love of my life. Imagine if I was pretending to be a heterosexual man, married, trying to have sex with a woman and having kids. But
Mm.
my courage to be myself has opened up a relationship with the love of my life,
Yeah.
my soulmate. I can't predict those things. So the
Mm.
victory isn't in the ideas of the outcomes we get. The victory is that we've lived the light within, and that's enough. So we have to
Oh,
reframe
I
what
love
success
that.
means.
I love that. Living the light within. Um, and I guess that's one of the beautiful things of when we sit in the field and we sense what does want to emerge from the future, what does want to emerge for us, what pathways are available to us. It is that you can only do that when you are authentic with yourself and you allow the light of presence to grow stronger and attract to you that which is for your highest good, but also where you can be of service, to people and to the world. Um, what what are your practices? I think it'd be really nice for people to hear your own practices to stay grounded. So what do you do? What do you have? Do you have a ritual that you do, or what are the tools in your
Hell
toolbox to stay grounded
yes.
and
Hell yes. And this is like it's power. It's simple. And the tools that
Mhm.
have me grounded are things that, like as Elizabeth Gilbert says, enchant me. We
Mm,
went to the Elizabeth Gilbert workshop together. It was amazing. And what grounds me are things I love and giving myself permission to do it all the time. So number one,
mm.
journaling. I journal nearly every day to my heart's content. And it's
Wonderful,
something I
wonderful.
do. I journal and I have classical music in the background as I journal. And I think what that's about is it's creative. Classical music is it's this beautiful creativity. It's come from
Absolutely.
somewhere. And so when
Yeah.
I journal what I'm thinking, my worries, my concerns. But this is the
Mm,
part that's surprising. The download I get is never what is I ever expect. So another way
right.
said, it comes through from the universe, and that sets me up for the day. So once I've done my journaling, it's my conversation with the universe. The universe
Yeah.
talks to me back. I'm ready, and that's critical
Mm,
for me. So my husband knows
mm.
it's my time, and that practice allows me to even show up today.
Yeah.
It allows me to,
Yeah.
I've nourished my spirit. I can now give. I'm not running on empty.
Mm,
I'm running,
mm.
I'm already nourished. I've had my food with the
Yeah.
universe. The second thing
I
is
love that.
connection. Connection.
Mm.
The second thing is my husband comes and joins me. We have our chai latte, has a coffee, and we chat, 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 to the point where the cafe owner actually asked us if we lived together. She could not fathom that a married couple actually catches up every day and still have things to talk about.
I love that. That's wonderful.
And you've been part of my practice. From time to time, I've sent you my sunsets, when I've walked.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all of that is getting connected. Another way of saying
Mm,
that is, why do I do all of this?
mm.
Life is a day at a time. Again, we live in this world where we're trying to have our 5-year goals, 10-year goals, 20-year goals. What am I going to do next? That's not how it works to be powerful in life. It's a
Mm.
day at a time. Be grounded in the now, and let's deal with arising to meet life on today's terms. It doesn't mean I don't
Yeah.
have my plans. I have my plans. I've got my dream journal where I write all my dreams, but then I let that give that to the universe and then work on who
Yeah.
I need to be today in the now. So
Yeah.
for
I
me,
love that.
the other practice is I've got to be grounded in today. And right now, there's nothing else to be but to be with you. That's it.
Mm.
Right in this moment in time, I'm with you. Full stop.
And that's the power of the now, right?
Yes.
That's the absolute, and that's the only reality because everything else is just a thought form. So
Yes.
yes, we have our goals, and I love that because I love the dream journal, and not the dream journal of recording what you dreamt during your sleep, the dream journal of setting yourself up for what is coming, what wants to emerge from the field. And
Yes.
actually, dreams is the name of your book.
Yes, and I wrote my book called Dreams Forging My Own Path. And
Lovely,
it's
beautiful.
extraordinary. You know,
It's a beautiful book.
it's I wrote it and I loved the writing of it. It's open, it's a tell-all.
Mm,
It's
mm,
things that in my past I would never been able to talk about because of shame, society's
yes.
expectations of who I should and shouldn't be. Is this going to be a good for my family that I wrote that, reputation, all of that. But what I've learned is
Mm,
that every single experience that has come my way has sharpened me. It's opened up the next door for the next. So for me, I'm hoping Dreams Forging My Own Path is my life story of navigating life, navigating different situations like setting up a company in Australia as a gay African man and dealing with the
mm,
negative conversations of who's going to want to work with me as a black gay man. And I remember
mm.
particularly a family member asking me that question. I said, I don't know. They're not knocking on my door. The people who don't want to work with me are not knocking on my door, so I will not know,
Yeah,
but the things
yeah,
I dealt with inside of that, what's it
yeah.
like, being a Zimbabwean traveling the world in essence?
Mm,
What is it like
mm.
navigating, living in my grandmother's heart to sitting on the board of a billionaire family? I've done that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember when I had these, what we call goals or dreams, and this is the premise of the book. Every
Mm,
time I became successful externally, my life became worse internally.
right.
And I'm like, what the F? I've come to Australia for this better education and a better life. I'm now,
Mm,
I've gone to Monash University. How wonderful. Everybody's celebrating that. I've entered into a good
mm,
law firm. How wonderful. Everybody's celebrating that. I've
mm,
become an
mm.
Australian citizen. How wonderful. You know, Worked in a startup. All of these things. So the more I grew, the more depressed I became, the more unhappy
Right.
I became. You know, I've discovered that
Yeah.
I'm an addict. I was coping, through
Mm,
addiction.
mm,
Didn't even
mm,
know I was an
mm.
addict. But that's how much pain I have been in. And
Yeah.
all my mentors were telling me to do more and grow more.
Right.
So then I thought
Right.
something wrong here.
Yeah.
And this is where we talk about emergence. There's something wrong here because
Yeah.
I am accomplishing what I thought I wanted, and also
Mm.
what society says I should be
Absolutely.
wanting, but I'm dying inside. That does not
Mm.
make sense. That does not make
No.
sense. And why is my grandmother happy living in a hut, no running water, no
Yeah.
electricity, with all those
Yeah.
crises? So I had to
So
rejig
it's
my whole life.
absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head. What is happiness? What does it mean to be
Yes.
happy? And it's a state of beingness. It's a state of
Yes.
being, not having or doing or achieving or creating an outside persona. It's a
Yes.
state of being. And I think
Yes.
the definition of that word has been lost. What it
Yes.
means to be, what it means to be, and to be in that space and that stillness and that, as you said, your grandmother living in a hut with no running water, and she's happy and she's grounded and she's strong in her
Yes.
power, and she was a role model for you. And that
Absolutely.
is, you've literally just hit the nail on the head. um I guess, as systems collapse, which sometimes, can be a good thing, and it happens all the time. It's been happening all around the world ever since the dawn of time, ever since humans created them. They've been collapsing and being, reborn and recreated. How do you find yourself navigating perhaps outdated systems? How have you dealt with that when you know deep in your soul and in your heart that there is a different way forward?
Oh, you've got the best questions. So, just to recap, systems do fall, and
Yeah.
systems falling apart is good.
Yeah.
I'm going to just say that again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, if you just look at it, what did COVID make available? I mean, the impact of
Mm.
COVID on the humanity, of course, was not great, but people work from
Mm.
home.
Yeah.
Who gets to benefit a lot from working from home? I'm autistic, so working at home makes a difference. Working moms,
Yeah.
being able to pick up the kids, like the whole system, it needed a whole reset, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, it came through COVID. But what these
Mm,
system resets can happen without having to have a failure. That's what people don't get. So that's the
yeah.
first thing. Don't be
Mm,
afraid of things collapsing. Inside, for me, new life can only show up in death. So it has to die for new life to show up. So I'm not afraid of systems collapsing. There are opportunities.
mm,
The second thing is, so I'm a what gay black migrant in Australia. There are many institutional barriers for me to be successful. Many. There's
I bet.
racism, there's homophobia, etc.
Yeah, of
Now,
course.
I am a victim to all of that. And I want to be very clear. I am a victim to all of that. I don't play the card of I'm not a victim. I am a victim to all of that, but I don't live my life being a victim to it.
Right. The mindset, the victim mindset, you
Yes.
mean, what we call
Yes. So
victim consciousness in conscious
exactly.
leadership. Yeah.
There you go,
Yeah.
victim consciousness. So there's an
Yeah.
impact on those systems on me in reality. It robs me of,
Mm,
finances. It robs me of health. It robs me of
yeah.
security. I can't
Yeah.
get income protection insurance because of the evasive questions white heterosexual insurance company people ask about my sexual life as a gay man.
Mm,
So there's
mm,
no understanding. So what do I do in face of that? I just build my own. I don't interact with it. It's the interaction that has me not be able to live my purpose, my vision. And this is the
right.
thing about it too. All great people don't even work in the system. Beyonce doesn't work in the system. Warren Buffett doesn't work in the system. They're building their own. So what I've really learned about systems is that, we are always wanting systems to change. And I think that's a good thing. I love systems that are inclusive, welcoming, make us feel safe. I have the privilege, and I want to be very clear, I have the privilege to have the consciousness to create my own and not engage in it. Now, because I have the privilege, that's why I've got to be on the field because I've had the privilege of being awakened. And not everybody is awakened. But then there are people like me who look like me whose lives are being killed off because they are in the system, in
Right.
essence. So my job on a day-to-day basis is helping people live life outside the system. I'm going to say it in another way because there are many
Mm,
different angles to all of this. The more we
absolutely.
try to change the system, the more the system remains the change. So I'm going to say I said that wrong. The more we try to change the system, the more the
Mm,
system remains the same. Look at it
mm,
like this. 10 years ago, would be talking about maternity leave and parental leave. People leaving the office at 3 p.m. was seen as taboo. Now we
yeah.
celebrate that. Like we'd have parental policies and maternity policies, which make it better, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's more
Yeah.
freedom for that. But there isn't freedom for like inclusivity for gay people or people who are neurodivergent. Now
Mm,
imagine if that same policy would just apply to people who are also neurodivergent. But now we're acting like there's this new thing for this new group of people. So
yeah.
there's always a problem with the system because the reality is in the workforce, we're all so diverse. One policy is not
Mm,
going to deal with everything. So the more we deal with a policy, it actually brings up more issues for other groups of
yes.
people because it's still unfair and still unjust in
I
essence.
love how you've framed that because what it brings to my mind is that when you're dealing the creation of the archaic or more legacy style systems were created from a very narrow viewpoint. They were never created from the field. They were never allowed. They never gave the flexibility to the systems to allow what wants to emerge. And this is why they can never capture all of the scenarios, as you've just said. And that's such a beautiful way of framing it because they never had that. They were never set up in that way. Their foundations are all wrong. The
Yes.
foundations are all wrong. And the systems themselves, as as they talk about at the Presencing Institute with Otto Scharmer, the systems themselves are not aware of themselves. If the system doesn't become conscious of itself, it can never allow what wants to emerge to emerge. And this is the beauty of, I guess, as you say in your book, forging your own path, because this is the creation of a space where you allow for things to emerge and to capture and hold everyone, in a warm embrace, to allow everyone to live their truth and be who they truly are and bring those gifts to the world.
You just said it so perfectly. And, when these systems are created, they're self-reflective. They can't think outside this. You cannot think outside the system. So even the update, like software update, the system, it's within the system giving an update to the same system,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah,
doesn't
absolutely.
deal with all the variations that could be there in essence.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. What a powerful reframing. So I know you touched upon your practices to keep you grounded and your journaling and the connection and all of those things. And you did mention the word downloads, which I love because, I love using that word as well. But do you find your creative pursuits and your creativity a spiritual practice?
Yes,
Is
I
that what
think what we're
you're
doing is
alluding to?
spiritual. I think it's
Yeah.
all spiritual because I'm living my authentic
Mm,
self. So
mm,
I now know it is spiritual because I'm living my authentic self. So another way of saying it is like, I discovered I'm not a fixed being. I'm not shy. I'm not
hmm.
courageous. I'm not extraordinary. I'm all of it. I'm not one thing. In the
Right.
human context, we are brought up to be the one thing.
Mm,
But in the spiritual domain, we're infinite. And in the world, we're taught that we need to find that thing that we can do from where we know. But what I train in leadership is I don't need to know. I just need to be because I can cause
right.
leadership. So another
Right.
way of saying that is I'm a coach because I say so. I'm an author because I said so, in
Mm,
essence. This book didn't happen because I thought I was an author. I declared I'm an author. And then I had to deal with all my obstacles around that, which is I'm good at
right.
speaking than writing, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I'm a businessman. So I don't need to know that I can cause leadership. So living a big, infinite life always starts with the ability to provide leadership. Hence, why my definition of leadership is called creating extraordinary futures that were never going to happen.
I love that. I love that. That is just
Creating
beautiful.
extraordinary futures that would never happen. This
Mm,
book, if I had listened to the world of who I am, what they said I
mm,
am, because I'm not, I shouldn't have written the book. I wrote the book myself, not no ghostwriter. I wrote this book myself. So I discovered
mm.
who I could be. So that was a
That's
future
it.
that was never going to happen. But I could
I
write
love
it
that. And
because
that's,
I'm authentic. Simple.
yeah. And that's part of well, that's both a spiritual practice and allowing what wants to emerge from the field. So
Exactly.
I love that. Um, Thank you for your time. It has been so wonderful connecting with you. And I don't even know where to start with the insights that you've shared today. I think that they are just phenomenal and they're going to really inspire our listeners. Now, if our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Uh, Three ways. LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, Rugare Gomo. My
Yeah.
email, connect at
Mm-hmm.
Rugare Gomo, or go to my website, rugaregomo.com, and you'll find ways to connect with me. But those are my three main
Wonderful. And
domains of reach.
I'll be sharing all of those links for people to have access to them, and also a link for people to be able to purchase your book, which I highly recommend. It is such an absolutely beautiful read, and your soul shines through on every single one of those pages, Rugare. And it is just such an honor to know you, to have met you, to hold space with you here today. I thank you so much And I look forward to being in your field and in your emerging wisdom moving forward. Thank you so much for your time
That's
today.
wonderful. I just want to acknowledge you. I acknowledge you for your light, for being on the field and bringing a person like me and elevating my voice in a world where I would typically be excluded. So I want to thank you for making my light shine, and in turn you
Oh,
shine so bright. I'm so grateful to be part of your tribe in its
thank you
entirety.
so
Thank you,
much.
Art.
I mirror everything back to you too, my friend. Thank
Thank
you.
you.